We're using your son's tuition fund for our honeymoon. Memories are more important than school. My fiance said while her mom transferred $38,000 from the account I'd been filling since he was born. She added, besides, he can work his way through. My son had just been accepted to his dream university. I didn't scream. I called my bank. Then my lawyer. When they realized the account was actually, I found out at my son's university celebration dinner. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the bank call, not the lawyer, not even the number on the screen. It was the moment my son Noah, still wearing the hoodie from his dream school, looked up from the table with that stunned, careful expression kids get when they already know something bad is happening and they are trying not to make it worse. We were at my fiance's mother's house. Linda had insisted on hosting because, in her words, this is a family milestone. My son had just been accepted to the university he had wanted since middle school. He had worked for it. Late nights, AP classes, shifts at the pizza shop on weekends, when I needed an extra hand, scholarship essays rewritten so many times the printer at home started jamming from overuse. He earned that acceptance. He also earned the right to feel safe for one single night. Instead, he got humiliated over chicken marsala and a store-bought cake. Linda raised her glass first. Vanessa sat beside me, one hand on my arm, smiling like this evening belonged to her. Her engagement ring caught the light every time she moved. Noah sat across from us, with his acceptance packet beside his plate, because Linda had asked to see it again. She kept calling it the little folder, which already got under my skin more than it should have. I'm Clayton. I was 42 then, living outside New Haven, and I had owned a small pizzeria for almost 11 years. Not a trendy place, just a neighborhood shop with a hot oven, scarred counters, 2 reliable delivery guys, and regulars who liked their slices folded and their names remembered. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when someone called out. My hands always smelled faintly like dough and basil, no matter how much I scrubbed them. I had raised Noah mostly on my own since he was 6. His mother moved 3 states away when he was little and became the kind of parent who sent birthday texts at 11:48 p.m. and called that effort. So it had been me and him, burned garlic knots on bad nights, science fair boards on the dining room floor, parent-teacher meetings in flower-streaked work shoes, a coffee can of receipts, 1,000 quiet decisions that added up to a life. And since the day he was born, I had been putting money away for his future. Not because I'm rich, I'm not. Because I know what it means to work with your back and your hands and still come up short. When Noah was a baby, I opened a tuition account and set up automatic transfers. Small at first, 50 a week, then 100 when business got better. Bigger deposits after good football weekends, holiday catering. One lucky month when a local food blogger wrote us up and people lined up for square pies like I'd invented bread. Over 18 years, it grew into something real. Enough to matter, enough to change his life. Vanessa knew about that account. So did Linda, because Vanessa told her everything. That should have been my first real warning. The smaller warnings came earlier, and I ignored all of them. Vanessa and I had been together 3 years. She was polished in a way I never would be. Corporate job, color-coded planner, knew which fork to use and how to say cutting things with a smile. In the beginning, I mistook that for steadiness. I thought maybe someone like her would be good for the two of us. Good for the life I was trying to build. She was kind to Noah when there was an audience. That was the pattern I did not name soon enough. In public, she'd call him my bonus kid and touch his shoulder like a campaign photo. In private, she asked why he needed so much expensive school stuff, why he couldn't take more shifts instead of joining debate team, why every decision had to be centered around college. Linda was worse. Linda never yelled. Linda specialized in little erasures. At Christmas, she gave Noah gift cards $20 smaller than everyone else's and called it an oversight. At Easter, she framed photos from brunch and somehow left him out of the printed set. When Vanessa and I started wedding planning, Linda talked about the guest list like Noah was a detail to manage. Of course he can come, she said once, while flipping through linen samples. I just don't think he needs a formal role. People want a romantic atmosphere. People. That word did a lot of work in their family. People wanted the right venue. People expected a proper honeymoon. People understood sacrifice. What they meant was that I was expected to pay for things and stay grateful for the chance. I covered more than I should have during those 3 years. Not because they forced me with a weapon to my head, because they learned how to frame every ask like an investment in us. I paid the deposit on the wedding venue when Vanessa's bonus was delayed. I covered Linda's emergency dental bill because Vanessa cried in the car and said her mother was too embarrassed to ask. I put $5,000 toward a kitchen remodel at Linda's condo after being told it would help for rehearsal dinners and holidays once we're all one family. I paid for weekend trips, dress alterations, non-refundable tasting menus, and a ridiculous artisan invitation package Vanessa swore was cheaper if we ordered early. Every time I hesitated, I got the same soft lecture. Clayton, you're building a life. Clayton, memories matter. Clayton, stop thinking so transactionally. Easy words from people spending my money. Still, I kept going. Because Noah was nearly grown. Because I thought I was giving him stability. Because men like me are taught that love looks a lot like carrying extra weight without complaint. Then Noah got into his dream school, and suddenly the weight shifted. Linda clinked her glass against mine. To Noah, she said. Very impressive. Noah gave a small smile. He's always been that kind of kid. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind who says thank you to waiters and notices when someone's carrying too much. Vanessa leaned toward him. We're all proud of you, she said. Then Linda asked, so how much is this dream going to cost exactly? Noah looked at me before answering. He knew enough by then to let me handle money questions around them. I said, he got a partial scholarship. The rest is covered. Linda arched a brow. Covered how? Vanessa answered before I could. By that account, Clayton's been filling since Noah was born. She said it lightly, like she was mentioning a casserole in the freezer. Noah's face changed a little. Not fear exactly, more like caution. Linda nodded slowly, then took a sip of wine. Well, about that. I felt my throat tighten. Vanessa set down her fork and turned to me with that calm expression she used when she'd already decided the conversation was finished before it started. I was going to wait until after dessert, she said, but maybe now is better. I remember every sound in the next few seconds. The hum of Linda's refrigerator, a car passing outside, Noah's thumb rubbing the edge of his paper napkin. Vanessa said, we're using part of the tuition fund for the honeymoon. I actually thought I misheard her. I said, what? She didn't flinch. She said, slower this time. We're using it for the honeymoon. Memories are more important than school. Linda, from the end of the table, added, besides, he can work his way through. Noah went completely still. That was the moment. Not the theft itself, the way they spoke over his future while he sat there, like he was furniture, like he was some healthy, capable inconvenience who should be proud to sacrifice for their beach resort photos. I did not shout. I wish I could say that was because I am noble. It wasn't. It was because the room had gone so cold inside me that yelling would have felt almost childish. I looked at Vanessa and asked one thing. How much? She folded her hands. 38. For a second, I just stared at her. $38,000. Then she said the part that told me this wasn't some fantasy conversation. This wasn't wishful thinking. This was already done. Mom helped me transfer it this afternoon. Linda gave me a look I had seen before when a contractor was late, or a server brought the wrong side dish. A look that said competent adults were solving a problem and I was embarrassing myself by reacting emotionally. Noah finally spoke. His voice was quiet. You took my college money. Vanessa sighed at him. Actually, sighed. It's not all of it, she said. And your father can rebuild. Clayton always lands on his feet. I can still see Noah lowering his eyes to the table. Not crying, not making a scene. Just folding inward by inches. That was when something very old and very clear settled in me. These women did not love my son. They tolerated him until he stood between them and something expensive. I stood up and said, Noah, get your folder. Vanessa blinked. Don't be dramatic. I took my phone out of my pocket. She said, Clayton. I was already dialing the bank. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. At dinner? I said, yes. I walked into Linda's hallway while the call connected. I could still hear plates and Linda saying, honestly, behind me like I was the rude one. The banker on the fraud line asked me to verify my identity. I did. Then I asked her to freeze every linked account with my name on it and read me the access history on the tuition fund. She did. That was when the night got interesting, because Vanessa and Linda had made one very expensive assumption. They thought being my fiancé gave Vanessa rights. They thought knowing some passwords, sitting in on one planning session, and sweet-talking a junior employee at our local branch gave them authority. What they did not understand was that Noah's tuition fund had been converted 2 years earlier into a custodial educational trust under a structure my accountant recommended after the pizzeria had a good year. My name was trustee. Noah was beneficiary. And any unauthorized withdrawal for non-educational use was not just selfish. It was fraud. The banker's voice changed when she saw the transfer trail. She asked me if I had authorized a same-day transfer of $38,000 into a newly linked joint account ending in 4,421. I said no. She asked if I wanted to report the transfer as unauthorized and initiate an immediate hold and recovery request. I said yes. Then I asked her to remove every external link added in the previous 30 days, put verbal passwords on my personal and business accounts, and note in writing that no fiancé, future-in-law, or third party had authority to act on my behalf. I wrote down confirmation numbers on the back of an envelope from Linda's entry table. My hands were steady by then. That steadiness scared Vanessa more than anger would have. She came into the hallway while I was still on the call. I held up one finger for silence. She started whispering anyway. You cannot seriously be doing this over a honeymoon. I covered the receiver and said, I'm doing this over theft. Her whole face changed. Not guilty. Offended. Linda appeared behind her in the hallway and crossed her arms. This is family money, she said. You're acting like we robbed a stranger. I looked at her and said, you did. Noah was standing at the dining room doorway by then, holding his folder to his chest. He looked pale, but he was watching me like he was trying to understand whether the ground was still there under his feet. I finished with the bank and called my lawyer from the driveway. I had used him before for the pizzeria lease, and once when a delivery driver got into a messy insurance dispute. He answered on the third ring. I told him, very plainly, my fiancée and her mother transferred $38,000 out of my son's educational trust without authorization. There was a pause. Then he said, do not discuss it further with them. Send me the account details and the transfer confirmation as soon as you have them. And Clayton, end the engagement tonight. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because hearing a clean sentence after hours of manipulation felt like air. When I came back inside, Vanessa was angry now. That polished composure had started to crack. You're ruining everything, she said. I looked at the centerpiece. White roses, gold candles, an arrangement I had probably paid for somehow. Then I took off my engagement ring and set it beside her wine glass. No, I said. I'm stopping this. Linda stepped toward me. You don't walk out on family over one misunderstanding. I said, you are not my family. Vanessa's voice rose. You're really choosing him over us? That sentence told me more than anything else ever had. Choosing him. As if my son was a side. As if protecting the child I raised was some romantic betrayal. I said, every time. Then I told Noah we were leaving. We drove home in silence for 10 minutes before Noah finally spoke. Is it gone? I kept both hands on the wheel. No, I said. They moved it, but they don't get to keep it. He nodded once and looked out the window. A few minutes later, he said, I'm sorry. That almost broke me. I said, you do not apologize for what other people do to you. When we got home, I made him tea he barely drank and sat with him at the kitchen table while he read through the university packet again. Not because he needed to, but because I think he needed to see that his future was still real. By midnight, the calls started. Vanessa first, then Linda from a second number. Then Vanessa's cousin, who had never once called me before in her life, but suddenly wanted to bring peace. Then, 2 voicemail messages saying I was overreacting, vindictive, unstable, manipulated by stress, cold, cruel, and not thinking about what this would do to the wedding deposits. Not one apology to Noah. By 9 the next morning, my lawyer had sent a formal demand letter and notice of potential civil and criminal action if the funds were not returned in full immediately. By noon, the bank had reversed most of the transfer pending investigation. By close of business, the next day, all $38,000 was back in the trust. Vanessa showed up at the pizzeria that evening. That part still makes my jaw tighten. She came in during the lull between lunch and dinner, wearing a cream coat and sunglasses, like she was arriving for a tasteful conversation between adults. My prep cook, Louis, looked from her to me and quietly took the dough trays to the back. Vanessa stepped up to the counter. "You made this public," she said. "I was grating mozzarella. I kept grating. You came to my business," I said. "You made it public." She lowered her voice. "We can fix this." There it was again. Not remorse, strategy. I asked, "Did you tell your mother to return the money before or after the lawyer letter?" She looked away first. Then she tried the softer route. "You know I love you." I said, "You stole from my son." She inhaled hard through her nose. "It was for our future." I finally looked at her. "My future doesn't include anyone who sees my son as a billable obstacle." That was the end of the conversation. I asked her not to contact me except through counsel regarding the apartment items and the canceled wedding expenses she was now suddenly very eager to split. She cried then, but even that felt organized, like she expected tears to unlock the old version of me. They didn't. The fallout dragged on for weeks. Linda left a voicemail saying I had humiliated 2 women over a clerical misunderstanding. Vanessa sent a 6-page email explaining that she had only done what any bride under pressure might do, and that deep down, Noah would benefit from learning resilience. A mutual friend told me Linda was telling people I let my teenage son control my life. Someone else said, Vanessa called me financially abusive because I removed her access from every account, canceled the wedding payments, and stopped the automatic transfer I'd foolishly set up for our shared event fund. I did exactly one thing in response. I repeated the same sentence to anyone who mattered. I won't fund a life with people who treat my son like he doesn't count. That was it. No speeches, no revenge. No social media post. No dramatic exposure dinner. Just paperwork, passwords, and silence. A month later, I sat with Noah in the financial aid office at his university. We reviewed the trust statements, scholarship letters, and housing forms. The counselor was a patient woman with silver glasses and a kind voice. Noah asked sharp questions. Good ones. Responsible ones. I watched him take notes and felt this strange mix of pride and grief, because that was the hidden cost of what Vanessa and Linda did. Not just the attempted theft. They forced him to grow older in one night. The symbolic ending came in August. Move-in day. We packed my old hatchback with plastic bins, dorm sheets, a desk lamp, 2 milk crates of books, and the battered pizza stone Noah insisted on bringing because, in his words, the dining hall can't be trusted. We carried boxes up 3 flights. His roommate had not arrived yet. The room smelled like dust and fresh paint. 1 narrow bed by the window. 1 by the closet. A blank space waiting to become a life. Noah taped up a photo of us from outside the pizzeria. Flour on my shirt, tomato sauce on his wrist. Both of us laughing at something I can't remember now. Then he took out a small envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a note. Thanks for picking me every time. I had to look away for a second. Out the window, students were hauling mini fridges and posters and impossible optimism across the quad. I folded the note and put it carefully in my wallet. On the drive home, I stopped at the pizzeria before opening and stood alone in the kitchen for a minute. The ovens were still cold. The metal counters were clean. Morning light was hitting the flour dust on the prep table. Quiet. No calls from Vanessa. No messages from Linda. No wedding charts. No extra mouths attached to my labor. Just the shop. My work, my son's future intact. I think that is what people miss when they talk about boundaries like they are punishments. They aren't. A real boundary is not a performance. It is an answer. It is the moment you stop arguing with what people say and start responding to what they do. Vanessa and Linda kept calling theft a misunderstanding because that word let them stay innocent in their own minds. But taking from a child's future to fund a luxury trip is not romance. It is entitlement in nice clothes. And love that asks your child to go without so adults can feel special is not love worth keeping. I didn't win anything glamorous. I lost a fiance. I lost deposits. I lost years I should have spent paying better attention. But my son kept his education. He kept his place at the school he worked for. And maybe most important, he saw with his own eyes that being calm does not mean being weak. Sometimes the strongest thing a parent can do is very plain. Make the call, move the money, call the lawyer, lock the door, choose the child. Every time